Welcome back to the Malt YouTube channel. In this video, James is going to be guiding me through my second all grain recipe that we're going to be building from scratch.
I know, I'm really excited because actually the beer we're going to be brewing is this beer right here. Ta-da! So stick around and you can see exactly how we went about crafting this fantastic New England IPA. Jo, it's been a couple of weeks since we brewed the first beer in this series, which was that awesome West Coast IPA.
Yeah.
How did you find the experience of going literally from scratch to a finished beer? Absolutely
amazing. The knowledge that you gain from doing all the different steps in the process was fascinating. It was really, really interesting. And then being able to drink my own beer at the end of it is like a win. It's good.
It was a fantastic beer as well.
Yeah, really nice.
Do you feel much more connected to the sort of ingredient selection and some of the processes we put into place during the brew day and why they're there?
Yeah, I think the penny's beginning to drop with it actually. It is beginning to make more sense how you are layering those different flavours in with the different malts and the different hops that we're using, and the yeast, of course.
It seems like the perfect time to strike while the iron's hot, Jo, and jump straight into our second beer style. Have you had any thoughts as to what beer you'd love to try and brew next?
Okay, I got my homework assigned to me, and yeah, I had a good think about it last night, tried a few beers. How about we do a New England IPA?
Okay. Cool. Well, I mean, for me, it's one of my favourite styles of beer, and actually very quickly when I started homebrewing, I wanted to start brewing those kind of beers.
Okay.
But it is certainly more complex than other beer styles.
Right.
So before we jump into like recipe design, should we just refresh ourselves on what the BJCP guidelines are for this style of beer?
Yeah, come on.
Now I've got the BJCP style guidelines open in front of me, and it's style number 21B, which is specialty IPA, New England IPA.
Yeah.
But before we jump into reading and researching about the style, can you think of any commercial breweries or examples that you've had of these beer styles that have blown you away?
I guess the first two that would come to mind would be Verdant and Deya.
Yeah, well, yeah, definitely. I think, you know, there's lots of breweries that have brewed these style of beers over the years, but actually here in the UK, the breweries that got hold of it and really became famous for those kind of hype train hazy IPAs were Verdant, Deya, you know, maybe Northern Monk to a degree, Cloudwater certainly right back in the day were right up there. But where the beer style actually heralds from is the East Coast of America.
Right.
Okay, so New England, right? Hence where the name comes from.
Yeah.
And there's a few breweries in and around that area, such as Treehouse, for example, that are really famous for brewing these style of beers. And it all comes down to how the beer presents to the drinker. It's a really exciting beer to get into. So let's check out what the BJCP style guidelines say to us.
Right, okay.
Now, I'm going to jump first off into the overall impression of this beer.
Yeah.
So, an American IPA with intense fruit flavours and aromas, a soft body, a smooth mouthfeel, often opaque with substantial haze.
Okay.
Less perceived bitterness than traditional IPAs, but always massively hop forward. The emphasis on late hopping, especially dry hopping, with hops that have tropical fruit qualities, lends the specific juicy character of which the style is known for.
Sounds amazing.
Yeah.
And leading into summer, really nice summer beer to drink.
I know, right?
Yeah. James, how do we go about creating this beer today?
Now we need to start with our goals in mind, with the end goal in mind. So we want a beer that's going to be lovely and hazy, going to have fresh hops in abundance, and we want like tropical fruit, stone fruit. You know, we want this to be basically like drinking on bongo.
I lie.
And we're going to want something that, you know, has that really soft, juicy mouthfeel to it.
Yeah.
So with those three goals in mind, we then need to think about the elements that are going to come together to create this.
Yeah.
So we'll start with the grist again, the malts that we're going to use. And the malts are going to contribute towards our haze in the beer. So we're going to be using malted barley.
Yeah.
Now, if you think about the colour of the beer, all of those IPAs that you've had of this style, they're like super orange, lemony orange colour.
Yeah, it's almost like drinking, or the look of a glass of fruit juice.
Yeah. So we're going to want a base malt that is low in colour. Okay. And I've got a couple of ideas in mind as to ones that I've used previously. But if you're building this at home, any low colour, pale base malt is going to do the job for you. Okay.
Yeah.
On top of that, you then need to start adding in other grains that aren't necessarily malt, but are going to contribute haze.
Yeah.
Okay. The first that we're going to look at is wheat, and we're going to use malted wheat. Again, just because it's my preference, but there's torrefied wheat that you can use. There's just straight wheat, you know. But wheat has a lot of proteins in it that contribute to haze. It's why, you know, Hefeweizen wheat beers have that thick, hazy appearance to them, right?
Yeah, okay.
So we're going to be using a large quantity of wheat malt, and then we're going to be using oats as well. Okay, we're not making porridge.
I was about to say, where are we going with this?
But again, oats do a similar job to the wheat. They add lots and lots of haze, but they also help us with that really soft mouthfeel.
Okay, right.
So we're going to be using those three malts, and then again, just because I love that thick rocky head, we're going to be using a bit of chip malt. So I think that's how I would build this style of recipe.
Okay.
There's lots of different variations out there, but actually keeping it relatively simple, because some of the other processes that we're going to go into are a little bit more complex or involved, such as water treatment, which I'll come on to in a moment. So that kind of 4 malt process that I use, or 4 grain types, has worked really well for me in the past. Okay.
Yeah, sounds good.
Now the next thing that we need to think about, and actually I'm going to jump into yeast now, because if we're thinking about the first goal, which is haze in the beer, we're going to want to choose a yeast strain that contributes to that, okay? And there's a number of different yeast strains that are available. They all basically herald from the original London Ale 3 strain of yeast, okay? That have gone on and, you know, been developed or been bred or been used at other breweries and then harvested. And what those yeast strains do is they don't attenuate quite as high as some other yeast strains. So they're going to leave a bit of sweetness and body in the beer, which again we want for this.
Yeah, that we enhance it.
And they contribute to haze. They're haze positive. Okay. The yeast strains that I've been toying with are a couple of dried strains. So one really popular one is the Lallemand Verdant yeast strain. It's Verdant's yeast, right? So that's one option. The other is WHC saturated, which again I've been using a lot. So, you know, I'm toying with one of those two at the moment. But again, if you're going to choose a yeast strain to brew this style of beer, one that heralds from London Ale 3 really is a good place to start, or just using London Ale 3. Now I know you're really eager to get to the hops, Jo, because you love them.
I do, I love my hops.
But we're going to talk now about water.
Yes, the technical bit.
Yes.
Okay.
Now,
keep it simple, yeah?
I mean, I don't profess to be an expert on how to create water profiles. This style of beer, though, really does benefit from a soft water profile.
Okay. Yeah.
Now, that means that you're going to want a beer that really has much lower perceived bitterness, which will be aided by a soft water profile. And with that in mind, you're probably going to want to start turning your eye towards some water profile calculators that are out there. Now, I use Brewfather. There's also a water calculator in the Grainfather app, and there's lots of other ones available out there as well for you to take a look at. It's impossible for me to tell you at home exactly what you need to add to your water to create a water profile.
All our waters are different across the country.
Now, one thing that we sell is a advanced water report that's provided through Murphy and Sons. Basically, you pay a fee, do a little sample,
send it off. They come back and give you the advice.
They'll give you a breakdown of everything that's in your water. They'll also give you recommendations for certain styles as well that you might want to brew. But having all of that information means you can turn your eyes towards one of these water calculators. That then becomes your source water then you can choose a target water profile, and a lot of the calculators have target profiles built into them.
Right.
And then you hit calculate.
Yeah, and it just does it.
Yeah, and it tells you
gives
what.
You a list. Right.
Yeah, it gives you a list of what to add to your water at what points. Okay. What I think we should do, bearing in mind with something you've said, is we're very fortunate to been given in the past the water profile that Verdant use.
Yes.
So I think we should try and target that water profile.
It makes perfect sense.
It does. We're never going to get there with the water that comes out of our tap here in Swindon. Okay, so we'll get close, but we'll never get there because we're in a hard water area.
Yeah, we are.
So we can only make a certain amount of adjustments.
Okay.
If you really wanted to go to town on this and make sure that your water is absolutely spot on, then you could invest in an RO water system, a reverse osmosis water system, which is going to take everything out of the water, leave you with empty water that you can then build back all the way.
Yeah. Okay.
All right. That's fairly advanced for today. We're going to go with our tap water. We're going to target the Verdant profile. We're going to use Brewfather's recommendations to get as close as we can, and we'll see how we turn out. That
sounds amazing, James. Can we talk about the hops, please?
Yeah, all right. You're always on to me about the hops. Now, again, let's think about our goals in mind and the style guidelines. New England IPA has a lower perceived bitterness than West Coast style IPAs. If you remember, when we brewed the West Coast IPA, we added hops all the way through the boil.
We did, yeah. I think there were 3 lots that we put in.
Yeah, and we were layering both flavour, aroma and bitterness by doing that. With this, we need a very small amount of hops at the beginning of the boil to get us a certain amount of IBUs, bitterness units, and then we're not going to add any more hops during the boil.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
So everything else goes dry hopped?
Well, it's a split between a big whirlpool and a big dry hop.
Okay.
And we're using similar quantities, I would suggest, between what you add at the whirlpool stage and what you add at the dry hop stage.
Okay.
With the whirlpool, we're going to use a similar tactic that we used when we brewed our last beer. We're going to do a 30-minute whirlpool.
Yeah.
Then we're going to leave the beer to sit for probably another 30 minutes or so to really let all of the hops settle out and really infuse. And the reason that I like to extend that whirlpool period is because commercial breweries, when they brew a beer, when they're done, it takes them sometimes an hour to transfer from the kettle into the fermenter.
Yeah.
So
it's all that extra time that you're not doing when you're at home.
Yes.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, because we're only going to be moving, 20 odd litres.
Yeah.
So that extended time really replicates the process that happens in the brewery.
Okay, that's an interesting concept actually.
We're now on to thinking about the hops that we want to select.
Yeah.
What do you want the beer to actually taste like at the end?
Something really tropical would be lovely. You mentioned Mbongo earlier, so we work down those lines?
Yeah, okay. We can certainly aim towards something big, tropical and juicy, okay?
Awesome.
I've got a couple of hops in mind that will really help us with that.
Yeah.
So I think what we should do now is jump into our brewing software. We'll start to build a recipe.
Yeah.
And we'll start looking at which hop selection we want to go for, all right? Jo, we have built a recipe, okay? So we've jumped into Brewfather and we've started playing around with the parameters there.
Yeah.
And we've ended up with a grist that's going to be around about 67% of Simpson's low colour Maris Otter.
Nice.
Okay.
Yep.
That malt for me is wonderful in these beer styles because you still have a little bit of malty character there, but the colour's really, really good. We're going to be using 15% rolled oats, 15% wheat malt from Simpson's, and then just a little 250 grams of chip malt for that head retention.
Okay.
All right.
Yep.
We're going to be aiming for an original gravity of 1062. Okay. So once the beer is finished fermenting, that will give us about 6.3 to 6.5% ABV. So
my weekend beer.
Yeah, weekend beer. And the hops that I have chosen are some, I think, going to give us that real tropical fruit vibe that you want. Okay. So we're using 10 grams of Magnum for bittering. Okay. It's not going to impart any flavour other than bitterness.
Okay.
And it's just going to bring about 10 to 12 IBUs of bitterness. No more in the boil. Then we're going to do our big whirlpool, and for that we're going to be using 30 grams each of Amarillo, Mosaic and Sabro.
Oh, nice.
Okay.
Yeah.
Amarillo gives us a lot in the way of like marmalade, orange character. Mosaic's going to be a bit danker and tropical, and then Sabro is going to be even more tropical, actually with a little bit of coconut in there as well. Okay, so I think between those three, we'll get very close to what you want in terms of that lovely kind of tropical fruit juice.
Nice.
And then for the dry hop, we're going to do 40 grams each of those three hops.
Those three again. Okay.
All right.
Yep. Sounds amazing.
I've ended up choosing our WHC saturated for the yeast.
Yeah.
Again, just because it's one that I've used quite a lot recently, and I love all of these yeast strains that do these kind of New England style beers. But WHC saturated is just, I'm in love with it. All right. It adds a lovely haze, and I think it will do us really well. I've worked out our water calculations. Now, as I said, there's not a huge amount of point in me going through what we're going to be adding.
No, because it's specific to our water.
Yeah,
okay.
But for us, we're going to be adding a little bit of calcium chloride and gypsum, both in the mash and when we come on to doing the sparge as well, okay? And I think because of the beer style we're brewing today, it would make sense for us to actually brew this on a Grainfather G40.
Ah, yes, yeah, nice system, yeah.
Yeah, and again, you know, last time we talked about the system that we use being really approachable for beginners. Actually,
so's this.
Yeah, the Grainfathers are a really good option if you're looking at, you know, an all-in-one system, but you're also fairly new to brewing, because it takes care of a lot of things for you. Yeah. It gives you notifications, it's Wi-Fi enabled, so you're going to get push notifications sent to your phone as and when to do things. You can manage the temperatures really easily. So I think that this is in the journey that we're going on, actually this brewing system is another good step as well.
Good step up, definitely. Yeah.
All right. So
looking forward to it.
Feeling excited?
I am.
Yeah?
Can we go brew?
Yes, we can get on and get brewing now, all right?
Thank you. James, that hazy we brewed a few weeks ago, come on. Is it ready to drink?
Jo, I'm very pleased to say that your New England IPA is ready for us to try today.
Yes.
I hope you're excited, because I'm very excited to try this beer.
I'm uber excited about this one.
Now, I think it's worth us, before we dive in, I know everybody watching at home is going to be keen to see how this turned out as well, but just to touch on kind of how the fermentation process went, how the packaging process went, because that's a really important part of the story when we talk about all of these hazy New England IPAs and pale ales.
Yeah.
And just to kind of give everybody a bit of an insight on what they can expect when they try brewing this beer style for themselves.
So dry hopping this beer was one of the key things we had to keep in mind. How did it all go?
Well, Jo, actually, the viewers at home can watch our dry hop for this beer, because in the video we put out last week, where Rob and I were talking about the Firmzilla, we actually dry hopped this beer, right?
Yeah.
But it was, you know, the Firmzilla gives us the opportunity to get the hops in with zero oxygen, which, you know, it's really important. If we get too much oxygen dissolved into that beer, it's going to end up going grey, muddy, real sort of muted hop flavours, a bit cardboardy, which is something we really didn't want.
No.
So the Firmzilla allows us to do that. And then also, because you've got the little collection vessel on the bottom, we can plug CO2 onto the bottom.
Yeah,
and bubble it up,
pump it all in, and actually watching it is amazing. It's just being able to have that clear fermentation vessel to be able to watch all the activity going on throughout the whole process.
Yeah, well, when Rob and I were filming, you came running out of the office to see what was going on, right?
Yeah, and like every morning that I come in, it's like, let's lift the box up and have a little look, see where we are.
Yeah.
So I love it. It's a really good piece of kit.
And just getting the hops into suspension a couple of times during your fermentation, during the dry hop process, means you're going to get the best out of those hops. So I'm really keen to see how that turns out with our finished beer.
I'm keen too.
In terms of packaging, again, packaging from the Fermzilla into a keg, dead simple.
Easy.
Yeah, we did that closed loop transfer where we just hooked up CO2 to the top of the fermenter, which again you helped me out with.
Yeah.
And we just pushed the beer from the Fermzilla into an already clean, sanitized and CO2 filled keg,
Yeah.
so that we've had as little oxygen contact as possible with the finished beer. I think that's probably enough about this though, isn't it?
I think so too, yeah.
Shall I go and pour us some beer?
Yeah, definitely.
Cool. Jo, there we go. We've both got a glass of this glorious looking beer. How do you think it looks?
I think it looks absolutely amazing. It looks like it's a meal and a drink all in one kick.
Now, you said when we were filming the first half of this video that you wanted the beer to be like fruit juice looking, you know, have that nice thick hazy appearance that you associate with these beers.
Yeah,
I think we've done that.
I reckon we are absolutely 100% on the money with it. It looks fantastic.
Yeah, me too. I mean, there's no way of seeing through that glass.
No, not a hope.
And again, I just want to point out that, you know, we've added clarity to this to reduce the gluten content so that Jo can drink the beer.
Yeah.
This is a testimony, I think, to the fact that clarity, if you're brewing these kind of beers, you can still brew a gluten-reduced, hazy, New England style beer and not compromise on the appearance in the glass.
Absolutely no compromise at all, is that? I mean, it is thick. Should we go in and give this a bit of a smell?
I think we should. Just remember, we wanted tropical fruit juice and bongo, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Let's have a sniff, see if we've achieved it.
It smells beautiful.
Oh, it really does. I know I pull that face a lot on these videos, but I just love the smell of these kind of beers.
It does smell amazing. It almost smells like it's fruit juice you're about to have with your breakfast on a Sunday morning.
Yeah, I'm definitely getting the marmalade orange notes from the Amarillo that we wanted.
Yeah.
There is that subtle touch of coconut in the background.
Tiny amount though. It's not at all overpowering, which I know people would worry about sometimes with coconut because it's a bit of a Marmite.
Yeah.
But it's really subtle and actually it almost enhances the other.
Sabro can be a slightly divisive hop, especially if it's used as a single hop. But when it's blended with others, I think it adds that real freshness that you associate with coconut, right?
Yeah. Can we...
Come on, Em.
Come on.
Cheers.
Cheers. Thank you. Oh. So where did we end up with this as far as... Is it a weekend beer or is it a midweek
We'll come on to that
beer?
in a minute.
Okay.
We'll come on to it in a minute. Let me know how you think it tastes. Just don't maybe drink too much.
That's Moorish.
It is.
Really Moorish.
Yeah.
Really... Yeah, you can feel the mouthfeel's definitely there.
So remember, we were talking about the mouthfeel, weren't we? And that we wanted that slick, smooth, soft mouthfeel. Do you think we've achieved that?
Yeah, absolutely. It's very different to the last one we brewed as far as that mouthfeel is concerned. And I mean, it's a completely different beer, but it really is very smooth. It's very Moorish.
Yeah. That bitterness is much lower, which again is what we wanted.
There's a little bit in there, but it's just there on the edges. There's nothing too overpowering.
No, and that almost complements the sort of orangey notes I think that you would like from this style of beer. You know, that blend of the three hops we chose, Amarillo, Mosaic and Sabro, I've never used that combination before. It really works. Really works.
It is really nice.
Let's jump back to your question, right? Because you asked me about how did we get on with fermentation and numbers and that sort of stuff. Well, we overshot our numbers on brew day as well. So we actually hit 1070 on brew day. We were aiming for 1062.
We were, yeah.
We wanted to aim for an ABV of around about 6.5%. Because we overshot our numbers and fermentation came in a touch lower than I was expecting, only by like 1 or 2 points. Still finished, I think, at 10-12, maybe 10-13.
Yeah.
This is about 7.5%.
Okay.
So it's not. Come on.
Right.
It's 1% over. That's a fair bit.
I mean, that's pretty accurate as far as I'm concerned. That's a winner.
But fermenting with the WHC saturated on a fairly cool temperature of about 18 degrees, 19 degrees, has meant that we've not ended up with loads of really like fusel alcohol notes in there. In fact, it drinks like a pale.
Yeah.
You know, in terms of like the perceived alcohol strength in there.
Yeah, it really does.
Could be a bit dangerous. This is still quite young.
Yeah.
We have only kegged it a couple of days ago.
Yeah, yeah.
Fermentation, we took about 2 weeks to do.
Yeah.
Just because we wanted to make sure it was fully fermented before we added the dry hops. Then we wanted to do that good contact couple of days with the dry hops. Then we cold crashed it before we packaged it and carbonated it. So it's been in the keg a couple of days. That will improve further over the course of the next week as things just start to homogenize and calm down a little bit in the keg.
Yeah.
But there's a beautiful malt sweetness to it. I think the balance between that malt sweetness and the bitterness is really good. And yeah, we've nailed the hop profile on this.
Yeah, that is a really, really good combination to bag for future, definitely. So we need to leave it another week.
Yeah, well, I think that'll be a struggle, but it will get better over the next week.
It will just improve with time, but then they always do, don't they?
Yeah.
They always do. Where to next then, James?
Well, actually, Jo, I think for the next one, rather than you tell me a beer style that you would like to brew, I'm actually going to tell you a beer style and you're going to build the recipe.
Oh, no.
Right?
Okay, yes.
So I'm going to put my thinking cap on. I'm going to come up with something that I feel is, you know, beneficial from what we've covered so far and what we've learned.
Yeah.
And you're going to have a go at building a recipe and then we're going to brew it.
Oh, this could be very entertaining.
I can't wait for it.
Pleasure brewing with you once again, James. Thank you very much for your guidance and support and helping me grow in my knowledge on brewing.
Jo, it's always a pleasure to brew with you. It's always a pleasure to help anybody expand their knowledge on how to brew beer from grain. It's something that I absolutely love, seeing people grow in the hobby.
You are so passionate about it as well. It's brilliant. It's really enjoyable.
Now we want to hear from you. If you've got ideas on what beer style Jo should try building her first recipe by herself with, hit us up in the comments down below. But also, if you've got thoughts, comments, questions on anything we've covered in this video, please let us know. We love reading them. Don't forget to give this video a thumbs up as well. Subscribe to the channel if you're not already. Hit the bell for notifications so you can stay up to date with everything we're doing here at Malt Miller HQ. And you can also find us on Facebook, Instagram, X, and of course, TikTok. Have a great brew.